Okay. I've been recovering from the flu. You can hear my voice. Yesterday, I had no voice at all, and I was a bit panicky about how I was going to present. So I was thinking about how I was going to, Attenborough this and have somebody come in and narrate my slides for me. And although I feel like I can make it through today, I did do a little bit of that. So I want to try for the first 4 minutes of this talk, the narration that I had my daughters make when I wrote them a script. So if it doesn't work or the sound doesn't go, if anybody comments online, no, I know, I'm gonna put it back up. If anyone comments online that they can't hear it, just tap me and let me know, okay? But they were such troopers for me. They're 10 and 7. So I just want to give this a try and see if it'll work. And then if it doesn't, I will take over for them. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Eva.
My name is Charlotte.
Our mom lost her voice. Probably made a bet with the sea witch.
We're going to talk for her.
Her name is Dr. Lorisacrey, and this talk is called Autism, a Multilayered Experience. Mom thinks of autism as made up of 3 layers. She thought of this idea when she should have been sleeping.
Mom!
She used to like looking at encyclopedias when she was younger, especially the A one.
Yeah, she was always a nerd.
The A1 had different parts of the human body, like the skeleton, muscles, and the skin.
The first layer is a skeleton.
The skeleton is a metaphor for the diagnostic criteria.
The second layer is the muscle.
The muscles are a metaphor for the lived experience, which can include things that are not in the DSM.
The third layer is the skin.
This is a metaphor for the person as they show up in the world and can include masking.
First, the skeleton.
This is made up of 2 parts. First is social communication and interactions. This includes ways we talk to each other, use of nonverbal communication, and making and keeping relationships.
And the second part?
The second part is RRBs, which includes repetitive motor movements, change in routines, preferred interests, sensory differences.
Second is the muscles.
This includes the lived experiences, such as conversations like being direct, nonverbal communication, such as eye contact or smiling, relationships, including context-dependent friends.
And also the RRBs.
This includes repetitive movements like rocking, routines and change such as ordering the same food at the restaurant, preferred interests like watching the same show over and over.
Mom likes Bob's Burgers.
And last, sensory differences like bright lights or loud noises.
That's a lot of stuff on there.
Yes, and there's more too. Autistic individuals also have increased rates of health concerns like ADHD and OCD.
What about options?
Yes, them too. Regulation can be harder and overwhelm and shutdown can happen.
Anything else?
One more. Executive functioning too. Paying attention or switching between activities can be harder.
That's a lot to think about.
Yes, it is.
And last is outside.
This includes what the person presents to the world, also known as masking.
What is masking?
Masking is a set of complex behaviors grouped into 3 categories.
What is first?
First is compensation. These are behaviors of neurotypical people that autistic individuals may mimic, including repeating phrases that others have said.
What is the second?
Second is masking. This is when individuals suppress their autistic traits, such as not stimming or not talking about preferred interests.
And the last one?
Last is assimilation. This is when individuals push themselves to do things that make them uncomfortable, like making eye contact even if they don't want to.
So masking is more than wearing a mask?
Yes, it's very complex and is used to help autistic individuals navigate the social world.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to make sure that that doesn't start playing another song in the background because it might. And hopefully it just get perfect. It picks up where I left off. So I thought that was really cute and I just wanted to play it anyway. So that is an introduction to the 3 different layers. I gave a much more in-depth talk about these at Autism Edmonton. So if you want to hear more description, I believe that video was available online still, or I can send you the link. I think I have it. So knowing about the 3 layers, I wanted to give this as background information for how we might put this into practice. So thinking about a feature of autism that we could explore this with, and I think one that historically has always been associated with autism is, of course, eye contact. It's a classic one to include. So when we think about eye contact, we can think about it as a range of behaviors. So we have kind of what we would call modulated eye contact, so where you checking and looking away and checking and really using it to help supplement your communication. And then we have kind of, you can see the 2 other ends where we might have someone who we would describe as maybe having more limited eye contact or not really checking in. And then we might have the other end where people are making very intense eye contact where there isn't a lot of modulation going on. And so when we look at this from more of like a classic diagnostic perspective, we would look at if the behavior is present or not present, right? But this becomes more complicated when you think about like that 3rd layer, for example, masking, because people who can mask definitely develop routines and rules for themselves on how to check in, look at someone, count to 3 in my head, look away, look back in, count to that kind of thing. So when you're looking at people who are masked, then they might look like they're modulating their eye contact, and they are, but the function of it is different, right? And so it doesn't become, is it present or is it not present? I think that's the first question. The second question always has to be, if it is present, what is the impact of doing it? So can you make eye contact? Yes. Do you like it? Oh no, I hate it so much. I would rather never look at anyone. And that's very different, right? So I think sometimes people stop at question 1 when they should definitely be asking question 2. So to really hammer this home even more, I want to think about like energy use through the day when you're going to work. So for a non-autistic, we'll go with neurotypical person here. On an average day, you go to work, you use energy, and at the end of the day, though, you're still able to go home and do most of the things that you would like to do. Make supper, hang out with your kids, stay up late night watching way too many episodes of Bob's Burgers when you should be sleeping. Um, and so pardon me, your average day is like, if you know what a bell curve is, that's the average. The average day, you still got energy to do what you want to do. And now I want you to instead think about the busiest day you've ever had at work. So you get up in the morning, you go to work, check what you have to do for the day, have some conversations with people. They give you a whole bunch more stuff that they want you to do. You start looking up the information they need. You make yourself a bunch of post-it notes. You have a bunch of meetings. And at the end of the day, you're just so wiped out that when you go home, you're just like, that was the worst day ever. I just want to go lay on my bed in the dark. I don't want anyone to talk to me or touch me. Like, just go away, everybody. And so that's kind of like the busiest day. And you can see it's at the very end of the bell curve over here. And that is a day that might take you up for the rest of the night. If you're neurotypical, you might be a little bit tired the next day, but you're still able to do most of the things you have to do. What I want to stress and why I'm giving this example is that for a lot of autistic folks, particularly those who engage in a lot of masking behaviors at work, your busiest day where you're exhausted is their average day. So every day they go home and they're just wiped out and they don't want to be touched, they don't want to be talked to, but they still have responsibilities that they have to do. Many have children, and so you can't just hide away for the rest of the night. So this kind of builds up over time where you're almost like borrowing energy from the future until the future energy is gone, and then you enter a period of burnout. So just wanting to hammer that home. So this is the part of the program where I'm supposed to give you tips on how to manage your life better. But I thought I would flip the script a little bit and engage in a little bit of that double empathy. So I'm glad that's been introduced already. And instead, I want to ask autistic folks and people who work really closely with autistic folks, like, how do you want to be supported? Instead of you having to do more things, what can everyone else do for you? And so I posed a question to a couple different people. And what I asked was, and if you're on the Autism Alberta Society Facebook page, you probably saw this question on there. I was like, can you tell me one thing or more that you think parents, caregivers, clinicians, friends, partners, kids should know or do to help support the autistic person or people in their lives? And so I shared this question with my clinical network of people that work with autistic folks. I asked the people at the Autism Research Center, some who have lived experience of autism. And then I posed it to the Autism Society support group. And so I took all of those results in and I summarized them. And now I want to give you a couple little things that you can do to help support your autistic loved ones in your life. So the first one is understanding that capacity and how it is different for neurodivergent folks. So if you remember that chart I showed you where the average day versus the busiest day, right? And so it's really about, when you're masking or you're navigating a world and using a set of rules that aren't innate to you. You can learn them and you can model them and you can mimic them and you can use them, but they do take a lot more energy because they're not innate necessarily within you. And each time you do these things, it drains a lot of energy that a lot of people don't see, because if you're good at masking, a lot of people don't even know you're autistic. And I don't mean that in a complimentary, positive way either, just a neutral observation. So it's like you've got all of these things that you have to do, and you have these kind of apps running in the background for social. Oh, I'm in a meeting. Check my face. What am I doing? Am I smiling or do I look angry? What did they say? What am I going to say? Oh, it's my turn. I need to think about what I'm going to say when I get asked a question. So all of these things that you're doing and we're doing in preparation for all of these things, they take a lot of energy and it can drain the battery a lot quicker. And that's why the average day for a lot of autistic folks is a neurotypical person's most busy day. And then we want to think about finding ways to help protect capacity for the autistic folks in our lives. So the key is like protecting it and also not letting the battery run low, because that, as I mentioned, that is a pathway to burnout. So, having a plan to help them be able to recharge at the end of the day. So this might be you pick your kid up or your partner comes home from work or, whatever it is they might be doing, and letting them have that period of time where they can, when possible, go in their room in the dark and not be touched or talked to and just like be ignored until their system is able to regulate itself a little bit, to give them a bit of space to recharge themselves so that they're not continually borrowing energy from the future. That would be ideal, is understanding that their needs are genuinely different from, potentially, unless you yourself are autistic, are genuinely different from your needs. And then also understanding too how the environment intersects with this capacity. So I love that this theater were able to have the lights off, but if they were on all day, for a lot of autistic folks, that can be really distressing and it can take a lot of energy just to kind of navigate that feeling of the lights being on you and being uncomfortable. And so even if you were like able to accommodate in certain ways, like giving written information instead of saying things to people verbally and getting them to understand that, those things are wonderful and they are super helpful, but also need to understand how the sensory environment plays a role as well. So, if you're at home and you I mean, there's the joke all over social media about nobody turns on the big light, but if there are ways that you can set up your own home to be a little bit more supportive and accommodating for those sensory needs, that is great. I think that's also why a lot of autistic folks kind of hang out in their bedrooms, because usually they set their bedrooms up to match their own sensory preferences and their sensory needs, right? So trying to extend as much of that as you can to the rest of your home and your environment, your work environment, your school environment as well. And then just some assumptions around, and I love that a lot of the stuff has been talked about before, which is wonderful. The social norms, where you go in and you talk to people, and a lot of neurotypical people will communicate kind of stuff with what they say, and they hope that you pick up what they really mean by using body language and tone and saying like, um, for example, if I had something due and Lonnie wanted to ask me for it, he's so polite that he's not always very direct when he wants something. But if we came in and went like, "How's that report going?" Like I would know, oh, he wants that report right now because I can pick up on that. But that's more of an indirect way where it's like, I'm asking you for the report, but I'm not saying, where's the report, right? So sometimes, and again, that is a skill that people can use and learn and navigate, but it is something that takes a bit of time to work with and also takes extra energy because you hear the message and you hear what they're saying. Oh, he wants to know how the report's going. It's going good. And then it's like, wait, is that really what he's asking me? Or is he asking you, where's the report? And so all of that extra work does take energy and capacity as well. So when we're, interacting with the autistic people in our life, trying to be direct, which I know can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people, but trying to be as direct as you can be and being open to people asking you questions if they want to say, like, are you asking me how the report's going, or are you asking me where is the report? And not viewing that as them being argumentative, but really them wanting clarity and just giving the clarity if because that is the role that we can play, is being direct and being clear and not being offended or upset when we get questions when we're not being clear, right? And then, when you're introducing new activities and to somebody in your life, even within like the first couple times when you're doing it, I think it's always important to set it up for success by explaining why you want to do it, why it's important, and then kind of talking through what's happening when you're going through it. And this might be something that would have to occur, first, second, third, fourth time, but then once it's there because it becomes ingrained. And so also when you're introducing it, it is really important to also consider the processing needs as well, right? Because as I did a lovely job of talking about, autism and ADHD often co-occur. And so there can be some very real processing challenges that might come up. So if you give the information too fast without giving time for them to reflect and think about it, then you may be overwhelming them, and they may not have time to fully process what it is that you would like them to do. So being able to introduce something, giving a little pause, waiting. Silence is golden. I love silence. I like to sit there and be like, you just let me know when you're ready. I got all day. And then we just move on from there. And that is more likely to be successful, taking those short breaks than having to keep repeating the same thing each time you do it. It is, it ends up being far less effort on our part and far more supportive to the autistic people that we're working with. And then also understanding the importance of routines and the quote unquote repetitive behaviors. Routines and predictability are really important, and there is a lot about being an autistic person in this world that is incredibly uncomfortable. There's so many social stuff, there's so much sensory stuff, there's just so many things going on that having a sense of predictability can be very reassuring because you know what's going to happen, you know what's expected of you, you know what's going on. It's familiar. And so when you're about to, ask somebody to do something that they had no idea was coming, it's probably going to lead to distress, or if it doesn't, they may be masking it, and it's going to come out later, or they may not totally understand what it is you're asking of them. So giving the heads up whenever you can is really important, and also being able to let them engage in whatever repetitive behavior or stimming that they want to do. I think there was like historically there was a big push to like try to guide people away from engaging in repetitive behavior. And I'm glad that that narrative has changed because it is one way to help regulate emotions. And so having a place, like whether it's at school or at work or, somewhere outside the house where it's safe, they feel safe to be able to go and just do what they need to do to regulate themselves, is really important. And having breaks throughout the day where you can just take a couple minutes, however long it is, to just like unmask and just exist as a person and not, just kind of run in standby mode. That's what I like to call it. I just want to be in standby mode for a little bit where I'm just like sitting and existing and nothing is happening. And just allowing that for a little bit can be really nice as well. And then also recognizing that a lot of emotions, one of the nonverbal pieces I think that comes up is like, well, I didn't know that they were upset because I couldn't tell. And so it's recognizing that the way that emotions are felt and the way that emotions are displayed can be genuinely different for autistic folks. So just because they might not look angry or just because they may not be displaying excitement does not mean that they are not feeling anger or excitement or anywhere in between. And there may be very good reasons why they aren't displaying emotion. And sometimes this can lead to overwhelm or like crashing out when you get home. And it's like, you looked like you were having a good time. I don't understand what's going on. And it was just like pushing through and just like, pushing yourself through something that was uncomfortable. And so recognizing that if you're going into a situation where in the past this person hasn't really had a good time with that or had struggled with that a little bit, just because you're not seeing it this time doesn't mean it's not happening. And maybe doing a quick check-in is a great idea. And if they need a break, like going with them to take a break or helping them find a way to take a break is really important. And this is one from the Facebook group, how, if you're a clinician who is working with autistic folks, that because there is such a genetic component to autism, it's important to remember that when you're working with an autistic folk, if you want to bring the family in to help with the treatment plan, right? Because even if they are not autistic themselves, they may have some features of the broader autism phenotype, or I think online people are referring to it as shadow features now. That was something new I learned. And that can look different for different people. It depends on their particular genetic makeup, but recognizing that, if you want to bring them in and you're expecting them to do homework and stuff like that, that also understanding that they may need some supports and some accommodations as well, and that you can't just expect them to do, like, to be your aid basically, and to do the work for you. You also have to respect that they are people with needs, and some of those needs may overlap with features of autism or features of ADHD or whatever it might be. And then number 9, and I think this one is really important, is that we should always assume competence, but don't always assume capacity. So just because somebody is able to do something doesn't mean that they, in that moment, have the capacity to do whatever it is you need them to do. They may have had a long week where they haven't been able to decompress and go silent at the end of the day. And so, I think historically there's been this, like, if a person has the ability or they choose to be verbal, then there's assumptions around them being able to be competent and to go do all of these things, versus like people who maybe aren't as verbal or choose not to speak. There's assumptions about capacity there as well, right? Or competency. And then, when you choose to communicate verbally or you mask the challenges that you might be experiencing, then there's assumptions around capacity, because it's like, oh, you look like you're having a great time. I'm going to get you to do this. And you may be putting a lot of demands on people that really don't have the capacity to do the things that you think they should be able to do. So I think it's important to ask the person, would they like to do it? Always assume competence, assume that they can do it unless you're given evidence otherwise, but then respect them when they say, I would love to do this, but I don't have the energy right now. And so invite, but don't exclude because you get 8 no's in a row. I still want to be invited, even though I might never come, or I might only come 1 out of the 10 times you invite me. I want to be invited still. Because who doesn't want to be invited to things? And then lastly, around the strengths and accommodations. So there has been a history around looking at more of the challenges and more of the deficit-based model of autism. And I think it's also really important to highlight the strengths that come along with being neurodivergent, because there's a lot of them. And then also recognizing about accommodations and looking at, equity versus equality. So just have a little picture where it's like, in institutional equality, everyone's kind of given the same tools and they're expected to go do the same job. But when you've got equity, you look at what is it that you need specifically to be able to do this job. So what barriers can we get out of your way so that you can do what you can do? And so recognizing that people are different and they have different needs. And so for the strengths part, one of the things that I like to do in a group that I run, and my co-facilitator last time I ran it is here, Clifton, I'm glad he's here, is to pull out something like this, which is strengths cards. I have a little QR code on the bottom there, and if you would like a copy of these, I did not make them, they were created by an OT, which I've noted at the bottom there. And one of the things I like to do is to ask people to look at these cards, and then I say, just pick one. And it is a struggle to narrow it down to one. And that is why I like to do this activity. It's like, because, you have so many lovely strengths being an autistic person. And this is just some of the ones that are a little bit more common. And I like to go over this. And then with respect to the accommodations piece, I made a little accommodations guide and I just went and pasted it into word cloud to look at the different types of things that the words that are in there around like accommodating and the communication, allowing people to do the things that they want to do and things like that. So I hope you found this information helpful. And I think as a part of being embedded in this community, we have a responsibility to do our support, like to do our part to show up and accommodate and work with and support the autistic people in our life and meet them instead of always expecting them to meet us where we're at. We have far more capacity to meet them where they're at. And I feel like we're not doing a really good job of owning up to our end of the bargain. So I want to thank you for listening. I've got a link to the ARC website. Charlotte is there with Lonnie. She had a blast. She keeps asking to go back, even this was 3 years ago. It comes up a lot. And then this is my psychology website. And I've got links up there. You're welcome to reach me at any time. And if there's any questions, if we have time, I'd be happy to answer some.